if you will. Give us some context of what's going on.
Well, I think, Wolf, in the first place, it would be hard to believe any random hacker would want 4 million records of employees from the federal government. Chinese and other countries' spy tradecraft, including our own, would be to find out all you can about who are the employees, what sensitive positions, what's their pay grade level, what clearances do they hold, where do they live, what's their address, what are their social security numbers, all of the data possible on present and former employees, so that then they can do a more targeted approach to try to find somebody to cooperate with their side.
To have a huge database, if you will, from which they can go ahead and search for specific information. Kevin, we know the U.S. government essentially left the door open for this somewhat. They didn't update software that could have entirely prevented what happened. That's what we're hearing, but I want to get your analysis.
Well, I don't think you ever learn what could prevent an intrusion based on the state of a victim company that's been compromised or victim organization. Meaning this, Wolf, the attack that worked, if that safeguard happened to be in place, there would have been the second attack, the third attack. I'm not sure we saw the boundary of the capabilities of this attack group at each one of these victim sites, but they usually have another trick in the bag that would be successful had the prior attack failed.
You investigated the North Korea hack allegedly against Sony Pictures back in December. How do you go about investigating something as enormous as this one? 4 million Americans, federal employees, current and former, who may have had their most sensitive information stolen by Chinese hackers.
Well, there's nothing different about this investigation than any of the others. Right now, it's one intrusion amongst many. The group that hacked into the government has hacked the private sector, other government organizations, and right now, as we overturn each little rock, we're finding evidence that they've been in other places. So this is not an isolated incident. This is a wave of attacks being done by at least a state-enabled hacking group in China.
Tara, you've studied this extensively, this whole issue of these cyber attacks. How good are the Chinese at this?
Well, the recent attack would suggest they're quite good. This affected 4 million former and current government employees. There's only 2.6 currently in the federal executive government overall right now. And I think what we've seen is the Chinese have engaged in a variety of attacks, not just to gain information for economic purposes or intellectual property, but this is particularly concerning because it can be used for blackmail purposes, getting information on security clearance individuals, and it can be used for counterintelligence purposes as well, as Tom was just talking about before.
Give us an example, Tara. How can it be used for blackmail?
Exactly. So basically, the OPM is the office that is the Human Resource...
The Office of Personnel Management of the federal government.
They hold about 90%, I think it's been reported, of the security clearance records of government employees. So from individuals from the Defense Department, the FBI, the CIA go through clearance and fill out information on themselves, it's housed in a repository at OPM. So that has information on where you lived, where personal information, your personal background and history, all information that even potentially individuals who are not currently government employees might still have records on file there, and it can be used to coerce or blackmail somebody with information they don't want made public.
Tom, you worked at the FBI. You were the assistant director. Were FBI agents compromised in this cyber attack?
Absolutely. Right after I retired, I had an issue that I wanted to check in my personnel file. I contacted Human Resources at FBI headquarters. They said, sorry, we've already sent your entire file over to OPM. So they are the repository for everybody in the executive branch for sure.
So even as we speak, Tom, right now, the Chinese hackers, whoever did this, they may have all your sensitive information.
Well, they probably do, but I had about 8 or 10 trips to China on FBI business also, so I'm sure if they wanted me, they already had it. But I'm not that worried about it, but yes.
But you got to take some actions to change passwords, stuff like that, right?
What are you going to do? You're not going to move, change social security number. Any change you would make, you would have to make it in the records of OPM. And frankly, I've had a few dealings with OPM. It would take them about 18 months to figure it out.
Kevin, what are the Chinese going to do with all this information?
Yeah, I really don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know what they intend to do. I just look at the scale of this. It's not stopping just at government organizations. You see the healthcare providers being targeted. I think that the real important issue, Wolf, is we've got to figure out as a country, is it reasonable for us to defend ourselves against state-enabled attacks like this? Because there's no doubt in my mind that Chinese government, if they're not behind it, are certainly aware of attacks of this nature.
Do you know, Terry, you were an analyst at the CIA, if your personal information could have been compromised as well?
They didn't really specify what agencies in particular were affected, although reports have said over 20 federal agencies have been affected. So I think they said they're going to be notifying people affected on Monday. So hopefully we're not sitting here as victims of the attack. I think interesting thing to see and to look for is how does the U.S. respond, and if and when it is made public, the specifics in terms of attribution. Is the United States going to issue sanctions? Is it going to just do some more public shaming? And there's a strategic and economic engagement summit coming up at the end of the month here in D.C. with the Chinese, so it'll be interesting to see how Secretary Kerry handles it in the upcoming discussion.
Yeah, the Chinese president is supposed to come to the United States in September. We'll see how that works out as well. Tara Meller, thanks very much. Tom Fuentes, you'll be back. Kevin, Mandia,